Hey guys, it's Cheiftain here. Welcome back to the Team Miracle 4 channel. Today, I'm joined by Roxy.
Hi.
Yes, that's Roxy. And we'll be doing the profile for Roxy's Murakumo HYU-GA Deck. So as you guys should know by now from the most recent ban list announcement, which is really quite some time ago, that a mainstay card for the Murakumo clan,
Shirayuki.
yes, has been restricted to one copy in all Murakumo decks. So for many Murakumo players out there who most likely are playing the 4 copies of Shirayuki along with the support cards, this means that the decks have to be changed a little to accommodate the ban list. Without further ado, let's get started. Okay, let's start with the grade 3s. So this is a deck profile I've been wanting to do for quite some time already. Just didn't have the chance to. Oh yeah, let's Standard Vanguard. That's our starter. That's Roxy's starter.
Masago Stealth Rogue Goemon.
Yes. Okay, so we start off first for the grade 3s. We're playing 4 copies of Samurai Cheiftain Hyuga. So this card still makes the Hyuga deck, or rather still makes Murakumo really scary and strong even after the Shirayuki ban. So it's the most recent VR. So 2 abilities, and Roxy will read out the abilities.
So first is a once per turn ability where you can just counterblast 1 and search your deck for any card with the same grade as one of your opponent's unit and then superior call it. And change all units on you and your opponent's field to this card's name, which is
Hyuga. So everything becomes Hyuga on your field and on your opponent's field as well. Alright, so this first ability basically toolboxes anything from your deck as long as your opponents have a grade 3, grade 2 and grade 1 unit out on the field. So, and since most of the time the goal is to reach grade 3, right? So basically this is a toolbox for any of your grade 3 units. So the grade 3 units are especially important in this deck as we'll get to them later. So super consistent, and coincidentally Shirayuki is a grade 3 unit as well. So this means that even if you play 1 copy of Hyuga, as long as your opponents reach grade 3, you'll be able to bring it up with Hyuga. Now Hyuga also has a second ability, which is
so plus 1 grade 3 and return all of your opponent's units with the same card name as you or your opponent's other unit to the deck and shuffle it.
Alright, so this skill might seem quite unplayable at first, unless your opponents are also using Hyuga and also calling Hyuga as the Rearguard. But that's where the first skill comes in. So over here, as Roxy has read out, Hyuga changes the card names of all units on both players' fields to itself. So basically, everything on the opponent's field is a Samurai Cheiftain Hyuga, and so the second skill will allow you to board wipe, essentially clear out your opponent's entire field, since everyone is already Hyuga. So that is actually one of the strongest board wipe abilities because it's so easy to achieve. You just need a grade 3 in the soul, and we have cards that soul charge. We also have grade 3s that go into the soul, and basically you just have to write into a second Hyuga just to get that second skill active. So that's really good, especially good against a lot of the decks right now, which most of them are quite reliant on the rearguards. So for example, the Aquaforce Revon deck is quite reliant on having rearguards. So there's that as well. And the fact that you don't retire but you actually return all those cards back to your opponent's deck means that you can counter a few cards from certain clans. So not too bad. Yep.
You get to return non-triggers.
Yeah, you also get to return non-triggers back to your opponent's deck. So
it dilutes the deck.
Yes, you fatten the deck. Instead of deck thinning, you deck fatten. Alright, so that's our 4 copies of Hyuga, or Roxy's 4 copies of Hyuga, the main card of the deck, and definitely you have to write into it. Alright, let's move on to the next grade 3, which is 2 copies of Covert Demonic Dragon Hyakivoke. Alright, so Roxy, what's the skill?
On Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, counterblast 1, discard 1 card. You can search your deck for up to 1 copy of itself and call it to a Rearguard Circle. Then if you have 5 or more units including of Vanguard, all units with the same card name as this unit gets 10,000 power until end of turn.
Yeah, so you want to use this card with Hyuga. I think it's supposed to be used with Hyuga. So have it on the field before you use his skill. Use Hyuga's skill to change everyone, including this card, to Hyuga. And then after that, you'll be able to power up all the units except for the card called with this ability by 10,000 power. He's one of the reasons why the Murakumo HYU-GA deck can hit for very insane numbers, like 40k, 40, 50, 60k.
It used to be good with Shirayuki because you could just discard Shirayuki and use Mini Madam to get it back.
Oh yes, that also. This card on its own, pretty scary, but let's pair it up with another card. It's gonna make your number's even higher. And that's up for 2 copies of
Covert Demonic Dragon Dagasona.
yes, one of Roxy's favorite cards because it's a really cheap card, it's just a common. And he single-handedly makes all your columns, all your attacks, all your power really high. So 2 abilities. The first is
All your rear guards with the same card name as your Vanguard gets 5,000 and is cons.
yes, continuous ability. So it works on both players' turn. So you can imagine like on your opponent's turn, if you called Hyuga to rearguard, those Hyugas will be 17,000 base. Yep. And all rearguards means that if you have a full column, that column gets plus 10,000 power already, which is really very good because this ability doesn't cost anything. Every turn you're aiming to use Hyuga skill once, right? So that condition will definitely be active during your turn. And the second ability is
When placed from deck gets 5,000 power.
so on the turn that you super call this card, he'll be hitting for
22.
at least 22,000. 27 on XL2 and 32 on XL1. That's Hyuga or 25k guard for most Vanguards. So these 2 cards are your power cards. They really make the deck hit very hard, and it's one of the reasons why the Hyuga deck is really hard to block, really hard to guard against.
And it's reusable.
Yes, so Dansetsu Anak doesn't require any cost. It's active every single turn basically without needing to pay any cost. It just has to exist on the field, whereas Yakivoke you have to pay 1 counterblast and a discard. Even though you get a +1 on the field, but it's not as spammable as your Dansetsu Anak.
You might have to fight for counterblast with Hyuga.
Yes, so Murakumo is one of the few clans in Standard that still hasn't gotten their counter charger. So there's that for those grade 3s. We still have 3 more grade 3s, so the deck plays more grade 3s than regular decks do because of Hyuga's ability to toolbox grade 3s and because Murakumo has a lot of really strong rearguard grade 3s. The next grade 3 we're talking about is
2 copies of Stealthin One-Eyed Noodle.
yes, so his ability is
If you have another unit with the same card name as this unit on your Vanguard or Rearguard circle, it gets boost and at the end of your turn, if you have 5 or more units, you may move it into the soul and draw a card.
yeah, so putting himself into the soul means that you can ball up your opponent's next turn with Hyuga's second skill, even if you don't rewrite, because he's a grade 3 unit. And also, by putting himself into the soul, he also escapes control like bind and retires, those sort of things. So the draw skill is also great to replenish your hand and build up defense to prepare for your next turn. So one of the weaknesses that a deck may have now with Shirayuki being limited to 1 is defense. So this card helps to, as I've mentioned, it's a great utility card to just build up on a hand size.
And also it gets boost.
Yes, so it's a 12k booster. So you have a very versatile card for the deck. So if your opponents do not have a grade 1 on the field and you need a booster, just search for this guy, 12k booster. Alright, now our last grade 3 is obviously the 1 copy of
Fantasy Petal Storm Shirayuki.
yes, so some decks have already chosen not to play Shirayuki, but Roxy still chooses to play Shirayuki because she can still help you to close games. And she's also a good first ride and a very good defensive card as well. So her ability is
So blast 2 and choose 3 units in your opponent's front row. They get minus 5,000 unless it's placed on Vanguard or Guardian Circle, then they get minus 10,000 instead.
yes, and it's for the entire turn. So it's very painful for the for clans that only have like 3 attacks, like Force and Protect. So this ability can be used both offensively and defensively. So on a turn, if you minus 10,000 to your opponent's front row, it's basically giving all of your attacks plus 10,000 power. And on your opponent's turn, if you guard with this card, you're also sort of like 3 grade 1 guards, technically. Yep, because you're guarding 10k, 10k, 10k for each attack on your opponent's field, depending on what clan your opponent is playing. But it's really good against restanding Vanguards because the Vanguard will lose 10,000 power until the end of turn. So that's one thing about Shirayuki as well. Her second skill isn't that relevant now because you are only limited to playing 1 Shirayuki, but the second skill is when its attack does not hit, return another copy of herself into your hand. So it allows you to just recycle Shirayuki. Basically, a lot of the Shirayuki support just focuses on getting her out from the deck and then recycling her from the drop zone after you used her and things like that. So yeah, this Shirayuki, one-off in the deck, but always searchable out with Hyuga, as long as your opponents reach grade 3, which I believe most players would want to because of the gift. So yeah, that's Shirayuki, one of Roxy's all-time favorite Murakumo cards. And there we have it, that's all for the grade 3s. We have 11 grade 3s. Is me creating a problem?
No, but not drawing Hyuga can be a problem.
Yes, Hyuga is definitely the card that you want to go into, no matter what. So, yeah, 11 grade 3s. And that's about it. Let's move on to our grade 2s. Now, the grade 2 slots for Murakumo is quite free, I guess.
Yeah.
Because they don't have that many amazing grade 2s. But one generically useful grade 2 that I believe is being played in all Murakumo decks, all standard Murakumo decks, will be the Swift Archer Fushimi. So let's have a look at his ability. So 2 abilities. The first is
continuous during your turn. If you have 4 or more rearguards, including himself, he gets 5,000 power.
okay, so sweet, 14k attacker for free. Most of the time you do have not that many rearguards because of Hyuga's ability to superior call. XL2 grants you 1 card, so if you're short on rearguards, you can just call that card that you drew. And if you're planning to use Hyaki Vogue anyways, you also need a relatively large field of 4 to 5 units. So I don't see how this condition will be hard to fulfill for the deck. Second ability is
On place, you can choose one of your units, and until end of turn, they can attack the back row.
so this is a very interesting skill. It's a free skill, right? It gives us the option to clear pesky rearguards in the back row of the opponent's field. So for example, certain grade 1s are very annoying. Like let's say you're fighting a Shadow Paladin, Scarwitch Nevin, it's a very annoying card, and Eremo for Kagero, Breathing Strike Garan for Kagero, especially with Draconic Blade Master returning. And then for Angel Feather, maybe Sexual Angel. That's the card that cannot be chosen. But anyways, Hyuga doesn't choose as well, so that's good. But if you need another outlet for you to clear your opponent's back row units in the early game, Fushimi. We have Fushimi. And if you have like units on the field that cannot hit your opponent's Vanguard, you can just grant them the back row attacking skill if you call Fushimi that turn, for you to just at least clear a rearguard. Because otherwise, if your attack isn't going to hit the Vanguard, you might as well use it for some control. So yep, that's Fushimi, really nice card. And then for the next grade 2, we have
Stealth-based Spellhound.
yes, so Spellhound. 3 copies, so 2 abilities. Sorry, 1 ability.
Skill, Soulblast 2.
Yep.
On place, you can search your deck for another copy of itself and call it. Increase and decrease the power of this unit and the called unit to that of your Vanguard.
If you call him during your grade 3 turn, he's going to be 12k. Unless you power up your Vanguard with cards like Hyakivoke. With Hyakivoke basically, then your Vanguard becomes 22k. So on the turn, if you call Spellhound, both of the Spellhounds will become 22k attackers for free. Very easy. Now another combo you can do with Spellhound is with Fushimi. So on a grade 2 turn, you write Fushimi, call down maybe a grade 1 that clones itself. I'm talking about Million Red. So Million Red, 1 Million Red gives you 2 Million Reds. So that's 2 rearguards already. You call a Spellhound. Spellhound skill Soulblast 2, call another copy of itself. Now you have 4 rearguards. Fushimi's ability activates to get 5,000 power. Your Fushimi is now 14k, and both of the Spellhounds will be hitting for 14k without boost. So not a bad card. I like the fact that Spellhound doesn't use Counter Blast. Instead he uses Soul Blast. And that's good because, as I've mentioned, Murakumo doesn't have any counter charges, and you want to leave the Counter Blast to Hyuga and Hyaki Vokes. So using Soul is very nice since there aren't many cards that use Soul. Just that 1 copy of Shirayuki, which you may or may not draw it. And also we do have Soul charges in the deck, like One Night Noodle and the next grade 2 that I'm going to talk about. So only 3 Spellhounds. Roxy only plans to use Spellhound like once a game, right? So the 3rd copy is just in case Spellhound gets into your damage zone or your soul or something, then at least you have a backup copy. But I can see this card being played at 4. Very interesting, very useful card. Just a +1 to the field, and since Shirayuki is down to 1 already, the deck doesn't really use that much soul, so I think you'll be able to activate his ability twice, possibly in a game. So you have that Spellhound. Oh, and one ruling about Spellhound is that if you call him to a XL circle and then you change his power to that of a Vanguard, he doesn't get the power boost from the XL circle. if I'm not wrong. So do correct me on that, but that was what I read. So that's Spellhound. And before we move on, Spellhound also works with a certain grade 1 in the deck, which I will get to later. Anyways, let's move on to our last grade 2, and that is 4 copies of
Cheiftain Jakotsuga.
Yes, so this is 1/3 of the Shirayuki engine. Roxy only plays 2/3, so the grade 1 isn't played in the deck, but this is the grade 2. Her ability is,
when her attack does not hit, you can look at the top 7 cards, search for up to 2 copies of Shirayuki, probably 1, add 1 to hand, and put the other to your drop zone. If you did not reveal any cards, so charge 1.
yeah, so this card used to be much stronger when Shirayuki was more relevant and at higher counts in your deck, but now you only have 1, so most of the time you don't get to find Shirayuki, right? So essentially she serves as the soul charger for the deck. You can use the soul for Spellhound, you can use the soul for Shirayuki later in the game, or you can also be lucky. If you're very lucky, you can soul charge a grade 3 and be able to get off the board wipe skill with Hyuga on your first grade 3 ride. And that's especially good against players that rush you, against rush decks. So same concept as Tsunamasa from Nubatama. Jakotsu Girl's ability activates when her deck does not hit. So she used to be able to force your opponents to take damage for her, because players don't want to face Shirayuki, right? But now that Shirayuki is down to 1, some players are not that afraid to guard her as compared to the past. So yep, that's 4 copies of Jakotsu Girl, and that's basically it for the grade 2s. So 11 grade 2s, 11 grade 3s. Let's move on to grade 1s. We also play 11 grade 1s. Start off first with one of the best grade 1s, most useful grade 1, and that is
Stealth-based Million Rat.
Yes, so pretty much played in all variants of Standard Murakumo, just because he can clone himself, fill the field with boosters, things like that, and deck thin. So ability is,
on Rearguard circle, if you do not have another Million Rat on your field, color +1, search your deck for up to 1 Million Rats, call it to Rearguard, shuffle your deck,
and it gets -4k. So it's a 4k booster for a turn. Doesn't matter. It's still a boost anyways, and yeah, it's just good to build up your field, increase your field size, especially for cards like Fushimi, which requires you to have 4 more Rearguards. Hyaki Evoke, if I'm not wrong, also requires you to have,
and 1 Night Noodle.
Yeah, and 1 Night Noodle. So all these requires you to have a certain number of Rearguards on the field. So this card on its own can be pretty good in helping you set up a field. And that's pretty much it for Million Rat. Let's move on to our other grade 1s. What's the next grade 1?
3 copies of Stealth Rope of Multitude, Sanji.
Yes. Probably the best grade 1 to come out of the set for Hyuga. So it works really well with Hyuga, but let's have a look at his ability first. Continuous.
If you have another unit with the same card name as this unit on your Vanguard or Rearguard, it gets 5,000. If you have 2 or more, it gets 10,000 instead.
So either a 12k or a 17k. Now 12k if you have two of these on the field. 17 if everything is him. Is his name, which you can easily change with the 1 counterblast ability of Hyuga's first skill. So essentially his skill will become Hyuga, and since everything becomes Hyuga on your turn, if you use Hyuga's first skill, most of the time he will be a 17k booster or attacker. So 17 on an XL2, he's hitting for 22,
yeah,
which is Trigger Guard. If he's on XL1, he's hitting for Hyuga, and he's just a grade 1. And then the next card that Roxy plays is the 2 copies of Stealth Stroke of Silence, Shiji Mamaru. So his ability is,
when he boosts, 2 of the units with the same card name as the boosted unit gets 3,000 power.
yes,
until end of turn.
3,000 power. Alright, so his ability actually makes him the best Vanguard booster, as Hyuga changes all of your units' name to Hyuga, which means you can target any 2 units, not just limited to the the name of the card, the written name of the card. So it's very useful in the deck as it helps to fix your column numbers. So we all know how important a 3k power can be, right, to hit your magic numbers, and other examples will be like 19k can become a 22k. So 19k will be, for example, Fushimi on an XL2, right, sitting for 19 to 22.
Or if
you
you
hit a
have
Vanguard.
1 Night Noodle as booster, another grade 3. In the same column, there will be 24 plus 3, 27.
27, yes, magic numbers against most Vanguards.
If you have grade 2 and then another one that you do, that is 21.
21?
And then plus, you
3?
give both of them the 3000.
So,
plus
so that column gets 6, right?
Then it will be 27.
Yes, so that's the 2 copies of Shijimamaru. Roxy likes to put her just behind the Vanguard because in the early game, he's essentially a 10k booster for free. Right. Our next grade 1 is 2 copies.
Book of Summoning Jiraiya.
Yes, Jiraiya. 2 abilities. The first is a Vanguard ability. When placed on Vanguard Circle,
you can draw and return a card from your hand to the bottom of your deck.
So it's a nice filter ability to get our key pieces, and as Roxy mentioned, Hyuga is a very important card you want to be seeing in your first 5 cards after Mulligan, things like that. So if you don't see him, you have a Jiraiya on a hand, you have another chance of trying to dig into your Hyugas. And
second ability, on Rearguard Circle. Once per turn, you can counter blast 1, your Vanguard gets 10,000 power.
yes, so if I'm not wrong, I mentioned that Spellhound works with a particular grade 1 in the deck, and this is the grade 1. So Spellhound and Jiraiya came from the same set, and obviously they work together. So one of the few combos you can do with Jiraiya is you can call him to Rearguard. Now his ability is activated, so it's not on place. So you can counterblast 1, give your Vanguard 10,000 power. Let's say your Vanguard is a Hyuga, so that's 22,000. Just call it Spellhound. Now both Spellhounds called that turn will be 22k base. Very simple play to give you 2 high-powered beat sticks. So not too bad. Mostly used for the first skill, I think.
Yeah.
Right. The draw and return 1 to the bottom of the deck. You can return cards that you don't need to see first.
Best right target since it's 8k base too.
Yeah. So that's all for the grade 1s. We have 11 grade 1s. And that's it for the normal units. Let's move on to the triggers. So triggers are the interesting part because it differs for a lot of players. So we start off first with the basic. We do need our 4 heals. Stealthy Yuki Hime.
One of the few defenses in the deck.
Yep. 20k shield is not a joke, and being able to survive, and it also acts like a counter charge for the deck.
Yeah.
Yep. And of course you need our 4 PGs. A lot of decks are hitting really high numbers, especially 4s. And then the other triggers, Roxy plays Rainbow. So 4 stands. Sorry,
Stands.
4 crits. 4 fronts and 4 crits. So Roxy's trigger lineup is essentially the Rainbow trigger lineup, so 4 of each trigger. So crits are good for the deck because the deck naturally hits very high numbers with Hyuga, with Hyakivoke, and Dansetsu and Arc. So for those attacks that your opponents cannot guard, having crits will be very good to push more damage and end the game earlier. And as for fronts, they help you to protect your rear guards. During your opponent's turn, they can act defensively, but they can also be offensive by making your attacks hit for even higher numbers. And it can make things really, really hard to guard because the columns will usually be hitting for
About 30,000, 40,000.
30,000, 40,000.
Yuki skill.
Yep. Once you get a front, right, without a PG, most of the time your opponents will not be able to guard and just free damage. So yeah, Vanilla's it's been working for Roxy so far, so I think it's not too bad. If you guys have a different trigger lineup, do share it with us. So yep, that's all for the main deck. We can move on to our alternatives. Right, for the grade 3s, we have Zanbaku. Dueling Dranger Zanbaku. So I'm sure you guys already know this guy. He was quite a problem card in the past. So the Zanbaku Hyuga deck is a completely different deck from Roxy's current deck, which uses Hyakivoke and Dansetsu Anak, and it's more of a beatdown deck. Whereas the Zanbaku Hyuga deck is more of a disruptive, maybe even control deck, with Hyuga controlling your opponent's field and Zanbaku controlling whether your opponents can write and get their gift or not. The Zanbaku Hyuga deck uses a different engine, so it requires you to play the 3 arresters with central, right and left, and doesn't play any of these other grade 2s because I don't think they have space for the other grade 2s. The thing about the Zanbaku Hyuga deck is that it doesn't hit as high numbers as Roxy's current beatdown Hyuga deck. So you may have a problem trying to finish your opponents off, but I mean Zanbaku just takes away quite a bit of advantage your opponent have. So I'll say both decks are quite different in their gameplay and their winning image. So yeah, that's Zanbaku. The Zanbaku Hyuga deck is one option you guys can play. I mean, standard is based off gifts, so the ability to stop your opponents from getting gifts is very, very good.
It also poses as another right target if you can't get Hyuga.
Oh yeah, definitely. So do players play Zangeki? That one I'm not too sure. Roxy hasn't tried out the Zanbaku Hyuga deck because I think she's more comfortable with the beatdown variant. So if they do play Zangeki, then I think the deck may have a way to close games. Right, because of Zangeki's gut restrict, stuff like that. For the grade 2s, one of the most played promo cards in Standard, just because it can get pretty crazy with Hyuga, we have Stealth Rogue of Indignation Meomaru. So we don't own any copies of Meomaru. So let me just put up a picture here. Okay, so Meomaru basically allows the deck to hit super high columns, much higher than what it is capable of right now. So Meomaru's ability is that it gives 5,000 power to all rearguards with the same card name as your Vanguard until end of turn, for just 1 Soul Blast when it attacks. So if you have one of him, combined with just one copy of Anarch, and each rearguard on the field will basically get plus 10,000 power for a cheap cost of 1 Soul Blast. The worst part, or should I say the best part, depending on whether you're the one piloting the deck or the one facing this deck, is that Meomaru is a grade 2, as you can see. So Hyuga, as we've talked about before, can only call a card from a deck with grade equal to a card on the opponent's field. And if you're going first, and that's why Roxy likes going second with a Hyuga deck, because then she can call out her strong grade 3s. But if you're going first with the Hyuga deck, most of the time you cannot call out her strong grade 3s, and the deck doesn't have that strong grade 2s and 1s, other than Sanji and maybe Fushimi, right? So Meomaru is like the main grade 2 target. If you play Meomaru, he's like the main grade 2 target for the Hyuga deck when your opponents are on grade 2, basically when you're going first. Before Meomaru was revealed, the deck's ability to push for damage is delayed. But now with Meomaru, it means that you can, search him out, toolbox him out as early as your opponent's grade 2 turn and your first grade 3 turn, and then you can start beating down on your opponent's 9k or 10k grade 2 Vanguard with your powered up columns. If you have more than one copy of Meomaru, maybe you have one on hand and you called another one from the deck, each rearguard gets plus 10,000 power, and that means a column gets plus 20,000 power. If your opponent has no PG, especially if it's early on in the game, they pretty much just stick the damage, and you can just kill them off the next turn with the regular Dances to Anarch and Hyakivoke combos. So yep, it's a really strong card. So the reason that we don't have any Meomarus, or the reason that Roxy isn't playing any Meomarus right now, is because it's quite an expensive card still, and just don't have the money. That's why with Dances to Anarch, at least you have a common, even though it's like grade 3 and you can only be called out during your opponent's grade 3 turn, but it still enables the deck to work pretty well and hit for very high numbers anyways. So Meomaru is just there to make the deck even better, even more competitive, but definitely the deck can still work without Meomaru. So an expensive card, maybe Roxy will get it one day, maybe not, but Meomaru actually works quite well with Niue Daio as well, which is the new stride from the Premium Fighters Collection. Sorry, not Premium Fighters Collection, but rather the Premium Collection 2020. I think it was made just for Hyuga, right? And it also stands a rearguard, so it allows you to abuse Meomaru even more. Right, that's all for Meomaru. Another grade 2 alternative from this set is surprisingly a card that is meant to support the Zanbaku deck. That is our Central Arrestor. So his ability is,
if it's in the center rearguard circle, which is the rearguard circle behind your Vanguard, he can attack your opponent's Vanguard.
So this means that he sort of creates an additional attack for you. And his follow-up ability is that if it's not relevant for this deck, but basically if you have a dueling Dragon Vanguard, it gets 5k for each unit with Arrestor. So it's really good in the Zanbaku Hyuga variant or the Zanbaku pure deck. But that's besides the point. The point is that he can create an additional attack for you. But now you're maybe thinking, he's only 9k body. 9k is not going to hit like your opponent's Vanguard most of the time. And that's where, cards like Hyakivoke and Dances to Anarch comes into play. They help to power up your entire field. So at least, minimum, Central Arrestor will be attacking for 14,000 with Dances to Anarch. And 14,000 can use it as the first attacker swing at your Vanguard. So the deck doesn't have any attack extenders, doesn't have any multi-attacks other than Central Arrestor and a grade 1 card that we're going to talk about later. So So if you guys want multi-attack, Central Rester is the card that you guys can consider for your grade 2s. Doesn't have any cost attached to it as well. So it's not bad. And then our last grade 2 is the Stealth Dragon Midoro Pyro.
On place, discard a card from your hand, look at top 2, 1 card into your hand, 1 card into your drop zone.
Yes, so it's just there to help you to dig deeper into your deck. Try to draw into a Hyuga because Hyuga is very important. It can also work with the Shirayuki and Rainy Madame, which Roxy doesn't play in the deck, but it helps to put a Shirayuki into your drop zone, and then you can retrieve it back with Rainy Madame. But so that's a tiny combo you can do with Midoro Pyro. But other than that, he doesn't get anything. He doesn't get any power. He doesn't do anything too much for the deck. So he's an alternative, definitely. But I personally feel like these grade 2s combined with Central Rester are much better alternatives for the grade 2s. And we're finishing, we have only 2 more alternatives. The first is
Cheiftain, Rainy Madame.
Yeah, so this is the grade 1 Shirayuki support that Roxy doesn't play. So her ability is
when your unit's attack does not hit, put this unit into your soul, and then return a Shirayuki from the drop zone to your hand.
Yes, and the unit's attack does not hit, right? Doesn't have to be her. So any unit on your field, including a Vanguard, will do for her condition. Since the deck can only run a maximum of 1 Shirayuki now, having her can be great since you'll be able to recycle her as many times as you have, copies of her that you play. She also adds Soul for Shirayuki and Spellhorn, right? But other than that, she's not in this deck because Roxy prefers the grade 1s that hit for numbers, like your Shiji Mamaru and your Sanji. Middle Red is I guess it's almost a must to play, and Jiraiya is a very nice utility card. You can work with Spellhound and help you draw into Hyuga. But definitely still an option for you guys to consider. The last grade 1 is Bangasa Stealth Rogue Sukerock. So this is the other grade 1 that I mentioned in Murakumo deck. He's capable of multi-attacking, so his ability is
at the end of the battle that your other unit attacked, if that unit is on an additional Rearguard circle, counterblast 1 and exchange this unit's position with it.
So very Aqua Force like. Basically after a unit on an Exile circle attacks, counterblast 1 swap. So the power bonus that Sukerock got with Dansetsu Anak and Hyaki Evoke will not be lost. So he'll be a pretty decent attacker as well. So he will hit for at least 23k on XL2 and 28 on XL1. So with such high numbers, why not just make use of multi-attacking cards to force even more guards out of the opponent, or maybe even close games much earlier. So Sukerock and Central Rest are definitely the more important or more useful and more interesting alternatives you guys can consider. The only problem with Sukerock is that he uses a counterblast, which, as I've mentioned, is usually reserved for your main guy, Hyuga, as well as Hyaki Evoke when you're trying to close games. So the counterblast can be an issue, but if you know how to manage your counterblast and if you're lucky for Hue triggers, I don't see a problem with playing like 1 copy of him in the deck or something. So yep, overall, those are the alternatives you guys can consider. I would say the Central Rester is probably the better multi-attacker just because it's free and you have more space in the grade 2 slots to play Central Rester. Right, so we're done with the deck profile, the main deck, and the alternatives. So all in all, even though Shirayuki has been reduced to just 1 copy in the deck, and Murakumo has lost some defense, the deck is still overall really decent, and is still able to beat many of the current decks out there. The bot wipe ability of Hyuga is very strong, it's very cheap cost, and as long as decks rely on Rearguards, it's going to be a very powerful ability. Right.
Can get rid of intercepts.
Yep, can get rid of intercepts on your opponent's field as well. And not many decks have the resources to build back a full field especially. So yep, the deck has both beatdown elements as well as control elements, and combine those and you have a very scary deck, just like the Hyuga deck right now. The deck doesn't have that many weaknesses. Maybe one of the few weaknesses is defense. Not much defense, especially with Shirayuki down to 1. Yep, and another thing is just not drawing to the Hyugas. If you don't draw into Hyugas, the other grade 3s are not that good on the Vanguard circle, especially Danset, so you definitely don't want to be riding him. Tangan Nudo isn't...
At least has
an XL gift, but you do need another copy of itself to activate the ability. Shirayuki is not too bad as a first ride. Hyakivoke works,
Ideal,
but everything is just much better when Hyuga is the Vanguard. But that's it for the deck. Hope you guys enjoyed the deck profile that Roxy and I did. So any last thoughts about the deck?
Hyuga is consistent.
It's consistent because of the toolbox ability, right? To bring out anything that you are missing at that point in time.
And super calling with SL is just.
Yup.
Thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the video.
Bye guys.